Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And today we're taking a look at the second team member in the burgeoning Ocular Max Combaticon lineup, having already taken a pass at team leader Incursus just last week. Now, he proved to be a bit of a revelation, and was certainly good enough to make me regret not jumping on the bandwagon with these lads a little earlier. So will the second toy in the troupe turn out to be quite as tantalising? Let's take a look at Ocular Max Fraudo. PS-15 Fraudo is one part of the Ocular Max Combaticon team and represents the self-serving, conniving huckster known rather appropriately as Swindle. Fraudo's unmistakable alternate form is that of a mustard and purple Jeep, and from photos it looks like Ocular Max have done a good job with it, so I'm keen to see for myself in hand. Of course, Fraudo also forms part of the full team combined mode, known as Assaultus, with the big draw here being that these toys feature an all-in-one transformation, with no parts forming whatsoever. Bits such as hands and feet and all the other stuff you might normally associate with a combined mode of this kind are all built into the toys themselves. And with team leader Incursus already having proven to be quite good fun in hand, I can't wait to see how Fraudo shapes up. Of course, we've previously seen the Combaticons done many times over, although arguably one of the first true Masterpiece-styled attempts was from Unique Toys a few years back, with their individual figures and the combined mode all packing quite the punch. Then there's the much-lauded Zeta Toys set, which is a true behemoth in its combined form, standing at an impressive 50 centimeters tall. It's kind of the opposite to the Ocular Max crew though, in that it relies heavily on parts forming and a number of fake parts to achieve the end result. So there's plenty of room still left on the table for Ocular Max to bring their own spin, and based on Incursus, I'm more excited than ever to complete this lineup. That's especially true as they also seem to be doing a generally fine job at representing the Combaticons as we know them from the original Sunbow cartoon. This should be quite the project once it's finished. Last thing to mention, today's video comes courtesy of TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site in the video description. The plan for today is to give you my first impression, and I'll be aiming to get the full review up on their site soon. Okay, and here is Fraudo in his box, and I have to say I really like the Ocular Max packaging. I mentioned this in my Incursus review just the other week, but yeah, they do a really good job. Really nice artwork on the front, that all built-in logo just here letting you know that it's an all-in-one transformation, so that's kind of cool. And yeah, it looks great. Quite weird that it's not a window box, the same as Incursus and their Impetus as well, which we'll be looking at just coming up. And yeah, that's a bit strange, but hey, it looks good. The back of the box has this little montage of Fraudo transforming into all of his modes, and that looks really cool. And then you can just see a little teaser for the full Assaultus combined mode there as well. So looking forward to that one, hopefully before too long. And then he's got his tech spec here, which is a real nod to Generation 1. Of course, if you're not familiar with those, and that looks really, really cool. Right, let's go ahead and get this box open then. Tape is cut. And there he is in his clamshell, so can't wait to see what's in the box. Well, here we have a little baggie with the instructions, the character card, and this little red tech spec decoder as well, which if you're not familiar with them, in Generation 1 would have been used to decipher the tech spec on the back of the box. The instructions look to be fairly straightforward. I'm not too worried. If it's anything like Incursus, then it should be relatively plain sailing, hopefully. Fraudo there, rather unusually packaged in his robot mode, which is versus the other two that I've had in hand so far, so that's unusual. Little small baggie there with all the accessories, so we'll take a look at that. So first up you have this rather nice looking cannon just here, which of course clips to his arm just like in the cartoon, and that looks really, really great. Some nice paint applications on that, and yeah, looking good. You've then got this missile launcher piece which can be held in his hand, and again that looks fantastic. Really nice silver paint here on the missile itself. It's a good show. This little piece, which looks like a pipe, is listed as being weapon support in the instructions. Always nice when they tell you what things are. but actually it's quite clearly the mount for those two weapons for his cheat mode. So we'll see how that works in a bit. Then you've got an additional face. Well, I say face, it's an additional head. They've given you a whole head. So that's something. And of course it's this sort of smirking expression that the character is typically associated with, let's say, in the cartoon and a lot of other media. So we'll see what that looks like in its place in just a bit. Right, so let's get that clamshell open. And there he is. The toy itself is looking really quite nice, but we'll do a proper once over in just a second. And so that's the complete package with Ocular Max Fraudo, and it's a decent set of contents overall. So not too much, not too little, just everything that you need really. All of his main weapons from the cartoon, additional head. What else do you need? Well, here's a little bit of an oddity, because I've just noticed that this arm is rotated the wrong way around straight out the box. I mean, it's not a big problem by any stretch, because of course you can just rotate it the right way around, but a little bit strange. Right, well, before we check out the robot mode, let's get him all weaponed up. So firstly, this bit pegs in just on his shoulder, just using the little peg just there. And that can go into either shoulder, but traditionally it's on his right-hand side, and it's got this little faux tire piece just there, so that's kind of fun. And there is the peg hole. So that just goes in like so. Then to place the missile launcher in his hand, you just want to flip down the little handle like that. And then of course that pegs right into the palm of his hand. And just wrap his fingers around, and that seems to fit quite snugly actually. Now in a neat twist, it looks like this piece can actually be mounted onto the back of the robot mode for storage as well. So it just pegs onto the back of his leg, onto this tab just here. Like so. And so out of the box and all accessoried up, here is Fraudo in his robot mode. And I've got to be honest, I think he looks absolutely fantastic. I'm really chuffed with him so far. I wasn't too sure from what I'd seen, you know, before having him in hand, but actually he looks really great. Very striking. The orange color is nothing short of just very eye-catching. Really nice, and it combines really nicely with the purple. That looks fantastic. Love it. Overall, very strong first impression right out of the box. Really like the way this windshield section looks on the chest in robot mode, and particularly like the sort of blue tint that the translucent plastic has as well. Wipers also look really quality, so and we'll check it out in vehicle mode later, but on the robot mode it looks good. I've already mentioned them, but these little wheels on the robot mode, these faux wheels, are very cool. I like that. It's a fun touch, and the fact that they actually spin as well, yeah, it's fun. These headlight sections on his midriff, I mean, I use this word sparingly, but they look fantabulous. Really quite something. The electric blue inside is just gorgeous. Really very striking, and looks great with the purple and the orange. From some of the pictures I'd seen, I thought the legs were going to look quite messy and like a lot of different panels and what have you, but actually they clean up quite nicely in hand. Spare tire on his back, exactly where it should be for a dose of cartoon accuracy, and looking very nice too, if I may say. Some small but really nicely applied paint applications just here on the legs and just on the feet there as well that you can see, and they look really good. And then you have this absolutely terrific head sculpt. That is just Swindle from the cartoon to a T. I think they've quite positively nailed that. Really dig it. It's very handsome but cartoon accurate without not being, overly stylized. It looks good. The sculpt is strong. The paint on the eyes is superb. Yeah, I'm digging it. Really digging that. Well, I do have my first grumble though, which is that the only way that you can swap out the head for the alternate version is by taking out this screw in the back there. I just have a bit of a thing about this these days because it just doesn't equal great play value, let's be fair. You don't want to be getting the old screwdriver out to do that kind of thing too often. So I thought we'd move beyond that a little bit, but hey ho. Oh, I love unscrewing my third-party figures. Gonna take that screw out of the head. There we go. That's the new one on. There we go, all done. I mean, look, it's a small grumble really, but I just don't like having to unscrew stuff, really. I resent it. Hey ho. Can't argue with the result though, because yeah, as predicted, it looks nothing shy of absolutely stunning. Really lovely alternate face. So nice to have the two options. Bit of a bugbear about having to switch them out in such a way, but hey, when they look this good, I'm not going to grumble too much. And you know, overall, he makes a really stunning first impression right out the box. I'm super happy so far. I'll get my hands on him and get him posed up properly in just a minute. But in terms of first impressions, as I say, it's an incredibly strong one. Proportions look good too. I was, again, slightly worried about the proportions. We talked a bit about this with Incursus and how, you know, his legs look a little bit too short for the rest of his body. And I had wondered that the same might be true of Fraudo, but actually, you know what? He looks great. I'm just really, really bowled over so far. So anyway, in terms of articulation, you've got a really good range at the head, which can move all around, and it's got, you know, nice up and down motion too. That's fantastic. Shoulders are on a double joint, so they go up and down, and then they can move up like that too, and you get really decent range of motion at those shoulders. Likewise with the elbows, they've got a really decent bend too. They go almost the full way, which is great, and you've got quite a decent bicep swivel just there as well. So really good range of motion in the arms. As far as the wrists go, there's a good bit of back and forth there as well, which if you see my previous videos, you'll know I'm quite a fan of. And of course, they've got a bit of a wrist swivel there as well. In an interesting move for a toy of this size, all of the fingers are independently articulated. Only at the knuckle, the main knuckle, but still, you've got all 4 fingers moving separately, which I was really not expecting. I just figured that all the fingers might be a single piece, or that the first finger might be separate. But yeah, no, they're all individual, and the thumb moves too. So that's it's a lot of posability for a hand on a toy of this size. Taking a look at the waist, well, he has a decent waist swivel. No ab crunch though. Then moving down to the hips, well, the first thing you'll need to do is move these hip flaps out of the way. They're independent for each hip. And then you can get quite a decent bend at the hip. I would say, yeah, pretty much 90 degrees. As far as the knees go, that's another 90 degrees. Quite blocky at the back of the leg there, so there's no real way that would ever go further. His feet can move up and down as well, so that's quite nice. And there is a bit of ankle tilt as well. Not the greatest amount, actually, I will say. It doesn't look like it goes very far, so we'll see how that looks during posing. And nothing to the outside, but a little bit of inward ankle articulation at least. And yeah, overall, I think he poses up really, really nicely and just looks great. You know, I keep saying it, but yeah, I'm really bowled over by him. All the kind of posability you would need. Some really nice tight joints, feels very quality in hand, which is great, just like Incursus did really. So it's a strong showing on Fraudo here. And he really gives off a decent vibe of the character too. And yeah, he's just a lot of fun to pose overall, to be honest. I haven't really got a lot to complain about here. I mean, I think it's fair to say if the biggest gripe that you've got is that you've got to get a screwdriver out in order to swap out the head, then and that's legitimately the one bad thing that I can sort of think of to say right now, then we're in good territory, it's fair to say. He's a lot of fun. And he just brings the character to life really nicely. I mean, there's something about the toy that just evokes that cocky, arrogant little you know what from the from the cartoon, and it brings him to life in plastic form really, really well, I have to say. There's a lot of charm to this toy, a really nice feeling about it. So yeah, I'm digging it overall, I have to say, really, really digging it. And I know I keep saying it, but a large part of it is just down to the way this head sculpt knocks it out of the park. I mean, really, really great job there. Really, really great job. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do a few comparisons and see how this guy shapes up next to some other toys. And the most obvious one to kick off with is, of course, Ocular Max Incursus, which is their Onslaught, so part of the same team. And I mean, as you would expect, they look really good together. Incursus remains massive, but still, they shape up very nicely. And I'm really interested to see this whole set all lined up together, because it looks like they're all going to be different heights. So that's going to be really, really nice. But the colors altogether, they work terrifically well. I really like how much brighter Fraudo is versus Incursus. But yeah, really, really excited about this set so far. Got a really good vibe for it. So now let's check him out versus some other Combiner Limb lads. So this is Fans Toys Spoiler and Fans Toys Magnum. There we go. And yeah, he looks pretty good. Bit smaller than them because they are quite large. But yeah, overall, maybe that works for you. Very different stylistically, bit more kind of detail on the Ocular Max lad. and not, quite the same sort of finish. I mean, that's nothing to take away from Ocular Max, but less paint on this guy overall, a bit more kind of bare plastic, whereas anybody familiar with fans toys will know that they have a lot more die cast and things like that in their materials. But overall, I think this works pretty well. But maybe you prefer your Stunticons of the smaller variety. So here he is with the X-Transports crew, all represented. And I think that works quite well overall. I'm sure some people will think that Swindle maybe looks a little bit large in that lineup. But there you go, you can see how it shapes up all the same. Interesting to see really how different third-party companies are interpreting the size of how combiners should be in their various forms. And then certainly it would be interesting to see if Ocular Max ever gave us a set of Stunticons, what they would do with it as well. I know they've teased a set of Protector bots, but maybe they'll get there eventually. And then here he is next to a couple of official Takara Tomy Masterpiece bots. Here's Masterpiece Prowl, Sunstreaker, and Wheeljack. And he is taller. He's actually bigger than I thought he was going to be overall. I think in my head I had him worked out to about Carbot height, specifically the Fraudo toy. But he's a bit bigger than I might have imagined. But still, it's no bad thing, and it's a strong look. He's certainly a lot brighter in hand as well. The orange, the kind of mustardy orange that they've got on him. But yeah, it works to my eye. And speaking of combiner limbs, let's go ahead and see how he looks next to the Combiner Wars, well actually the Unite Warriors, I should say, the Takara version of the Constructicon set. And you know what? I absolutely love these toys, really loved them. And I do still use them as kind of Masterpiece stand-ins. Alright, they may not have articulated hands and things like that, but for my money, in individual bot mode, and really the combined mode, they still look fantastic as part of a Masterpiece display. People will tell me I'm wrong, and that's fine. I don't care, because it works to my eye. And actually, you know what? Again, that just kind of shows you how nicely they can kind of slot in. So interesting to see. But why stop there? Let's take a look at Masterpiece Megatron. There he is. And Make Toys Meteor. There he is. Okay. And again, size is such an important thing when assessing these sorts of lineups and if it's going to work for your collection or not. So see how you feel about that. For my money, again, he looks taller than I might have imagined, but he definitely works quite nicely in that lineup. I think that looks very good. And now it's time for a bit of a futuristic lineup. So here's Fans Toys Sovereign and Fans Toys Quietus. And of course, standing in representing the 2005-2006 crowd. And obviously Swindle in the cartoon fits into both the kind of 80s and the 2000s lineup. And he looks really good. I always kind of associate these two characters together for scenes like those in The Ultimate Weapon, that episode. And to my eye, that looks really nice. Really nice indeed. And then we may not have the rest of the lineup in hand from Ocular Max yet, but here he is with just a couple of the unique toys Combaticons, just to see how that works. And interesting to see they're roughly about the same in terms of head height. Design-wise, a little bit different. Obviously, they're very different kind of design aesthetic. But, I've always sort of said it would be interesting to see if anybody ever does kind of mix and match these sort of Masterpiece-style combiner limbs from different third parties. So if you were to do such a thing and you just want to, you're not worried about the combined mode, you just want to see them in their robot modes, it certainly would be interesting to kind of, pick your favorite from each different company and see how that works for you. Maybe nobody does that, I don't know, but somebody must, right? Somebody must. And then of course we'd be remiss if we didn't do a little comparison of Swindles. So here is the Unique Toys lad himself and the frankly hilarious effort from Zeta Toys as well. This is the sort of more cartoon accurate set, in case you're wondering. I don't have the original set that they did of them, but this is the more kind of cartoony colours. But there you go, a trio of Swindles. And really for me, this is just such an interesting comparison. I mean, here you have represented the current three major key players in terms of the third-party Swindle offerings. People can argue and say that some other company maybe should be represented as well. I don't mind, that's fine, it's completely up to you. But for my part, these are the three that I would consider as trying to really ape that Masterpiece look. And they're all very different, all very, very different. I mean, just going from this side, Zeta, first of all, yes, it is aiming at the Masterpiece market, but really, for my money, it's all about the combined mode with this set. I mean, this look, I don't dislike it necessarily. It's not cartoon Swindle. I really like the head. It's very, very stylized, and it's got this absolutely hilarious face sculpt. It makes me laugh every time I see it. But as far as the main body goes, the colors are on point. But clearly the details are very, very different, and you've got a very different look overall. Moving on to the Unique Toys set. I've had this in my collection for a good couple of years now, and I gave it a very good review when it was first released. And I had a test shot of it in hand, and I like it still. I really, really like it. Were it not for the Ocular Max set coming along, I think these guys would be probably sort of sitting on my shelf in robot mode with Zeta in combined mode maybe. But looking at it now, it's interesting because it's a very pale color in comparison to the Ocular Max Effort. And indeed to Zeta, which is actually much closer to Ocular Max. There is a difference. This is slightly more faded, still very vibrant overall, but this is much more of a kind of strong mustard color, kind of English mustard? I don't know. Yeah, real kind of English mustard look to it. So there you go. In case you were wondering on your mustards. But yeah, this is much more faded in hand, and even the purple, to be fair, it kind of looks muted, like someone's just drained the color out of it a little bit by comparison. Still really like the head sculpt, but it's definitely been outdone by Ocular Max, 100%. Do like the head sculpt, but yeah, outdone, no question. And even just the proportions, actually I prefer Ocular Max again. I mean, this guy I always really liked, but looking at him now, the arms do look beefier by comparison. It's interesting how when you introduce a new version into your collection somehow, like this guy, how the comparison of what you previously thought looked really good, it kind of, I don't know, it looks a bit different, doesn't it? It sort of changes in your mind's eye a little bit. I've had the same thing with, toys like MP11, for example, Starscream, where I used to really like it, and now I look at it and I kind of think, oh, wow, it looks a bit outdated versus some of the newer stuff that's come along. So it does happen. But yeah, there you go. And by comparison, overall, there's no question for me that Ocular Max shapes up the nicest in robot form. It just does the job really well. It brings to life the character in a way that even the Unique Toys version doesn't quite. So, hats off to them. They've definitely delivered for me on this comparison. Right, so we're going to go ahead and try the first transformation now, and interestingly, the instructions get you to go straight from robot mode to his leg mode for combined mode. So we'll give that a go first, so let's go. we're all done with the transformation and we're in leg mode. And well, it was quite fun actually. It was all right. A couple of moments where it was a bit arduous. Not as smooth overall as in Cursus, I will say, and not as enjoyable. But I probably didn't expect it to be either, given that it's a leg. But yeah, the instructions don't really help either. I will be honest. There's a couple of bits where it gets quite confusing as to what the instructions are asking you to do, and that definitely didn't help. And really, that's all related to steps 17 and 18 here, where it just simply says, fold up knees and calves and push foot assembly up, which makes it sound like a fairly standard transformation as far as these types of things go. You know, shortening of the leg is quite a classic piece of transformation, even back from the 80s. But actually, the way it moves is quite a bit more involved. There's a lot more to it than that. So they've really sort of undersold it there. Additionally, whilst the instructions do mention removing the knee pads on the front to allow the legs to move, there are also some panels on the back here as well. These two little panels here, which are very, very tough to fold out. And then these two panels here, which need to fold down. And all of those need to move in order for the leg assembly to actually move up in the direction that they want you to. And even then, it's not that simple. So it does require a bit of attention. Equally, the instructions are not particularly clear about what the end result is supposed to look like. So it does get a bit confusing at that point if you don't know what you're doing. The way this top section unfolds is quite interesting though. I mean, the whole thing sort of expands out and then folds round and clips and unclips and all kinds, and it is interesting. I did take a bit of a war wound though on the way. Just managed to catch my finger in one of the joins and managed to slice it slightly. But yeah, I mean, it's really not difficult at all in that regard, and once you know what you're doing, it should be fairly simple. And yeah, the end result is quite interesting. I mean, ultimately, it's a leg, so, you know, don't get too excited. But actually, there's quite a lot to talk about. I mean, the fact that this foot is integrated is kind of the key part of this set. I mean, the big sell here, of course, is that all of the various combiner bits, foots, arms, legs, heads, whatever else you can think of, it's all integrated into the individual robots. And so it is here that the foot actually forms part of the main body and just kind of folds out. And actually, it's fairly simply done. And it looks all right. I have thought from combined mode pictures that the feet themselves look a little bit small, but I guess that's to be expected as part of the gimmick. I do like that it matches the color of the main bot though. That's one thing that a number of third-party Bruticai have missed, is that actually in the cartoon model, his feet are the same color as his legs. So obviously the foot for Swindle is mustard and the foot for Brawl is green. And Ocular Max have followed through with that here, so that's quite nice. And in fact, the whole thing tidies up quite nicely all the way around. Looks pretty decent, and you can already see some evidence of the articulation that will be available once we've got the combined mode all up and running, because he has ankle tilt, all thanks to this rather nice little mechanism just down the bottom here, involving a couple of hinges. So that looks pretty smart. Now, what I do like is that they've actually given you room on the back here to include and store away all of his various weapons. So there's, you know, following through on the fully integrated combiner gimmick. That's a really nice touch. And it's especially welcome as that you obviously have to remove this spare tire for the combined leg transformation. So, you know, it's nice that it can stow away again. So that just quite simply tabs back in, just like that. In order to stow his gun, you need to pull it apart into two pieces. That's quite hard to do. The main barrel then just tabs in here like that, and the back section just clips into these two little holes like so. Then you take the missile launcher and fit that into the other peg hole, and finally the weapons mount, which we still haven't seen fully in action, but there you go, it pops in just there. So overall, that's a really neat and tidy solution. I really like it. I like that they incorporated that. Nice touch. And actually, if anything, it kind of helps to fill out the back of the leg mode. So yeah, looks good. And we're not going to do much in the way of comparisons for the leg mode, but it is still interesting to see how he shapes up versus Masterpiece toy like MP45 Bumblebee. So there you go. Be interesting to see. Not the largest combined mode of all of the third-party Bruticus's. That'll still be Zeta toys. But still, he's shaping up pretty nice. Anyway, that's enough of the leg mode, so we're going to take a look at the transformation into his Jeep form. Here we go. Okay, and there he is in Jeep mode. Well, without any of the weapons anyway, but that's the basic form. And the transformation again wasn't too bad. Interesting that the instructions do again prove to be a little bit confusing at times, though. There's more than a couple of steps that they just outright miss, which is frustrating to say the least. Particularly the way that the feet transform. There's a little bit with the heels folding in, which took me a minute to figure out because it's just quite simply not in the instructions at all. So that's interesting. And then the most notable exclusion of all has to be this front section, which I've figured out myself by looking at the box art, because there's a little piece just inside here that you might have seen just at the end there that you have to lift up the sort of bonnet section and fold out to form the front of the grille. And when I looked at it, I just thought that doesn't look right. It looks like there's a piece missing, I was fairly convinced that it wasn't as it was supposed to be, but it just took me a second and a lot of untabbing to kind of figure it out. And then the bumper rotates round as well, which is also, well, unless I can't see it, but I've searched several times, it doesn't appear to be in the instructions. So there are a couple of steps that, are just outright missing, which is a little bit annoying. Anyway, not to worry, as the final result looks pretty nice. Fairly good representation of a Jeep mode. A little bit of mess around the back just here, a bit of kind of kibble and unsightly sort of robot stuff. But overall, the basic form is there and the colours look really nice too. So, I'm pleased with it. It's not the best vehicle mode that I've ever seen, but it does the job. Of course, we can go ahead now and put the spare tyre back on. There we go. Don't know about no parts forming, but minimal parts forming, might be fair to say. Then we'll go ahead and reassemble this gun, which then attaches onto the weapon mount. And then we can also attach the missile launcher. And then rather annoyingly, to actually attach the weapons themselves, you've got to unpeg the the rear half of the Jeep, which I did not know until this point. So, hey ho. Right, so hopefully we can just go ahead and slot that in there. A little bit cumbersome. There we go. Just get that all readjusted. Reattach the spare tyre. Grumble, grumble. And then we have the complete vehicle mode with weapons section installed as well, and that looks really, really nice. This is kind of a very signature piece on Swindle's vehicle mode, so I think they've done a good job of it. I like the colour of it too, and it sort of adds a little something to the mix of the colour palette overall. Now, probably worth noting the little bit of movement that you've got there as well, because this whole thing can rotate round, and of course you can move the various weapons as well, so there's a good bit of play value in that. Slightly annoying that now I can't seem to get the spare tyre to stay on very well. In fact, if I just nudge it, it just sort of just rolls off at a moment's notice. I mean, it slots on easily enough, there you go, but it doesn't feel particularly tight on there. And again, if I just, you can see there, look, it's just sort of very loosely held on It just feels like it's gonna fall off and roll under the sofa at some point, so it's a little bit annoying. Of course, you've got a kind of attempt at a real world interior there with a little steering wheel just here, and some seats which are made up of actually, interestingly, fake. The underneath here is a pair of fake headlights for the robot mode, so that's not what I would have expected that to be made of. But there you go. That's it. Steering wheel looks a little bit odd with the pieces filled in, of course, rather than being hollowed out like you get on the Unique Toys version. But still, it's a nice attempt. Spare wheel just fell off. Now again, this front end looks really cool. The headlights look spectacular. Really, really like that. Some very miniature little paint applications just here too, underneath. So that's really nice. These are not the same headlights, as I say, that you saw in the robot mode. So, but arguably these look just as nice, if not nicer, to be honest. So and go really well with that purple bonnet section too. And indeed this lovely blue windscreen just here too. It all looks really, really lovely. The bumper's a wee bit fiddly, if I'm being slightly nitpicky, just because it has a tendency to move every which way. It rotates round. These bits all move rather independently, so there's a sort of slight propensity for that getting a bit crooked during normal posing or play or whatever. Spare wheel fell off. And as for the wheels themselves, they look really nice. I really like this silver paint and the detail on the inside. That looks great. And indeed, they are rubber tyres. They all roll quite nicely. And yeah, just really kind of complete the look. And indeed, he rolls pretty well. There's a tiny bit of cable at the back here, but it's not too offensive. I'm sort of questioning if I've got these sections completely right, to be honest. I'll need to check it out later. It's there or thereabouts, but they seem to just be hinging down a little bit, so I suspect I may need to just tidy that up just a tiny bit. Underneath is quite tidy too. Everything packed away quite nicely. So you know what, I probably wouldn't go as far as saying it's perfect. I mean, I do have a couple of nitpicks here and there, but it's a decent vehicle form. I mean, it's quite clearly not a sort of a licensed Jeep mode or whatever else. There's definitely a few liberties taken, but I do like it overall. There's particularly the colours, in this section, the bonnet, this mustard colour there again. I know I keep going on about it, but it's just really, really striking in hand. This blue on the windshield is just lovely. This kind of warmish grey that they've used for the weapons, the silver just here. For me, that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I gotta say, it's it kind of brushes over any of the complaints I might have about the slightly detail-heavy sculpt and some of the messiness that you can see, and really kind of brings it all together. So for me, the colours just win all over, absolute win. Okay, well, final thing, let's do a few vehicle mode comparisons. So first up, let's check him out next to a Masterpiece Carbot. Here he is with MP25 tracks. And yeah, I mean, he's definitely oversized. I mean, you're always going to get that with Masterpiece Swindles. Even if they did an official version, it would be oversized, no question. I just can't see there's any other way around it. It's just one of those vehicle forms, a bit like, when we get to different companies trying to do the protector pots and doing groove, we're going to get the same thing with that motorcycle mode. And so it is with the Jeep. It's, same with Masterpiece Hound. It looks a little bit larger than it should, but still, it's nice to see them together, and it looks good. And next up, we're going to take a quick look at him versus KFC Ditka, or at least the test shop version that I still have in hand, which is the sort of lighter version, lighter tan version, nice color. And these two look really, really cool together. I like that. I mean, again, real world scale, be damned, it's not working at all here, but still, it's good to see. And as a final comparison, we're going to put him up against Make Toys Endgame. Here we go. Who I just did a video on just the other week, and yeah, I mean, again, gosh, I'm getting further and further away from like accurate scale here, but still, it's fun to see. And actually, it's interesting to see the colours of these two. And actually, I wish that they'd use this colour. That you see on Fraudo. I wish they'd use that on Endgame actually for the wings. It's way nicer. I mean, it's not too far off, but it's just a bit more vivid. So that for me is an interesting comparison just to see, because this looks a little bit washed out and it's kind of, I don't know, a bit more turgid by comparison. So, overall first impressions for this toy, That it's really good. I like it a lot overall. Got a lot of nice things to say about it. Really like the robot mode. That's my favorite by far. The leg mode, hey, I mean, we'll assess properly when we've got him all, the full Assaultus mode combined up, and we'll take a look at that then. But, it's fun. I like the all-in-one gimmick. It's definitely adds something new to the mix. So that's something. And the vehicle mode cleans up pretty nicely on the whole, and the colors look great. So that's something. I mean, look, is he perfect? No, but he is really good. I like it a lot overall. I got many nice things to say about this toy. And overall, I think it does a great job at bringing the character to life too. So even if you are just in the market for a nice Swindle and you don't want the full Ocular Max set, maybe that's an option for you. But either way for me, in terms of first impressions today, I've got to say, it's a toot. So that's Ocular Max Fraudo. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be working my way through the rest of this team, so keep an eye on the channel for more unboxing videos to come. I'll also put the link to TF Source's Ocular Max listings in the video description, and I'll be aiming to get the full review and loads of photos of Fraudo up on their blog ASAP. So thanks again for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and there's a quick shout out to all my Patreon supporters coming up at the end of the video too. Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.